Hey guys, it's GodCubing here, and today I'm going to show you how to orient all of your last layer edges so you never have to get one of these again. If you don't already understand good and bad edges, then you should follow the card here to a tutorial I made on good and bad edges. So today, we're going to influence our last layer edges by rotating. Here's an example of how we'll use this trick. Here we have one good edge in the top layer. We have another good edge in an F2L slot, and two bad edges in F2L slots. Now, if I were to rotate here, this edge becomes good, this edge becomes good, and this edge becomes bad, and this edge here stays good. So what we learn from this is that all the edges in the slots change from good to bad, and all the edges in the top layer are preserved. So, going back, we could have taken this edge out, because it's a good edge, and now it's in the top layer, so when we rotate, those two edges stay good, and these two edges become good. And now all of our last layer edges are good. The goal here is to have all of your last layer edges be oriented by the time you insert your last pair. I recommend not really worrying about the last layer edges until you get to your second pair, because this gives you more time to find the edges, and then you can orient at least 3 edges during your next 3 pairs. So, as I said in the example, you want to replace your good edges with bad edges in the slots, and then keep your good edges in the top layer, and then rotate, and all your edges will be good. And I find that the best way to use this in a solve is to find a pair you need to rotate for. So, for instance, this pair here, I need to rotate for because it has a bad edge. And then you can find your bad edges and your good edges, and then replace the good edges in the slots with bad edges in the slots. Then rotate, and then solve that pair, and all your edges will be good, and you'll have one pair down. I usually try to do one edge per pair, so I'll orient an edge while solving a pair that I need to rotate for each pair, usually. That way I get to 3 or 4 edges by the last one. And now I'll explain to you how you can preserve all your good edges throughout your last slot, and how to orient that last edge if you've only oriented 3. So, if you've oriented all 4 edges by the time you get to your last pair, then congratulations, you can solve your last pair without rotating as well, because your last pair edge will be good, because good and bad edges always come in pairs. So, therefore, this is a good edge, and you don't have to rotate. So, just make sure that when you solve your last pair, that you do it without using any F or B moves or rotating. That way, all of your edges will remain preserved. Alright, now here's the interesting part, is that if you were only able to orient 3 edges and you still have a bad edge, then you can do this cool thing where if you didn't have a bad edge in the slot, you insert the bad edge into the slot, and then when you rotate, it'll make this a good edge, and this edge will be a good edge as well, meaning that you then don't have to rotate, and you can solve this pair rotationless, just like I showed you for the 4. If you only have 2 edges oriented during your last slot, then what the heck were you doing during the last 2 F2L pairs? You can do it like this. So, put one of your bad edges into the slot, and then bring your other bad edge that's in the top layer to the front, like this, and then do a sledgehammer, which will orient all of your last layer edges, and your last pair will also be able to be solved rotationless. So, yeah. This is a really great trick, because you can use alg sets like Summer and Winter Variation to skip OLL, sort of. You can also use alg sets like COLL to orient all of your last layer edges, so that you get an EPLL. And alg sets like ZBLL are also useful because all of your edges are already oriented. You could also just use the really good algs for all of the edges oriented cases, like soon, anti-soon, and so on. This is really useful for one-handed, as all of the edges oriented cases can be solved using only R and U moves. This is also useful for FMC and feet, as long as you can do it efficiently, and then you know COLL or ZBLLs, it can really help improve the efficiency of your solve and lower your move count. I primarily use this trick during my last slot case, when I have something like this, where I have a few edges oriented. So in this case I have 2 good edges and then 2 bad edges. What I'll do is I'll put a bad edge in the slot, and then, do whatever I do. So if I had 3 edges oriented, then I would do what I do for that. Or 4, I would just solve it rotationless. Here I have 2, so I know that I can do a sledgehammer to orient them all, and then solve from there to orient all my edges, as opposed to just solving it the normal way, which would have left me with 2 bad edges. So overall, this is a really great trick, but if you haven't noticed already, it's kind of hard to look ahead to your next F2L pair while orienting your edges. So this trick is really mostly useful in events where you turn slower, like feet or one-handed, or even in big cube solves. And I actually used it in my PV single, so you can check out the reconstruction I made here. And Felix Zemdegs uses it in his one-handed solve, so, I mean, you can't really go wrong there, right? Honestly, it's a really fun thing to practice. Well, at least it is for me. But it really isn't that useful in two-handed unless you're already like world-class at cubing and you can look ahead like no sweat. So, and if you are world-class at cubing, like, could you comment that down below? Like, that would be kind of cool, right? So, if you found this trick interesting, be sure to like the video. And leave a comment down below telling me which step of CFOP you want me to make a video about next. And as always, subscribe if you enjoy this type of content.